podcast. This is the story.
Post-hunt.
Yeah, we
Post-hunt
one
recap.
one episode ago we did a pre episode on the hunt we were going on, and I just got to say that there's a whiskey that I used to drink back in. It was called Rich and Rare.
I just gotta say,
And this story that we're about to share with y'all, it's
and
rich
and it's rare.
and it's rare. It's a
Rich.
banger. It is one of
Banger.
the when you talk about a good old fashioned elk hunting like hunt story,
like a bucktail, but it's a I don't know.
we got something for you right here right now. Before we get into that though,
It's gonna be a long one though. It might end up being a part 1, part 2. So we'll see.
yeah, it very well could be because there's a lot of detail to this story and a lot of firsts. And like I said, I would recommend if you're just tuning in, go back one episode, listen to kind of the layout of this hunt, and just to get a little bit of a color and understanding of who was hunting and all that. Dev and Jeff here both pulled a tag, Colorado first rifle elk, but we're just going to get to this story because there's a lot of detail. I think it's going to take a long time to unpack it all.
Yeah.
Before we do that, use promo code podcast on the website, paintedarrow.com, and get yourself...
Doesn't that feel good saying paintedarrow.com?
It does. Yeah, for those listening, it was, for the longest time, paintedarrowoutdoors.com. And we invested, and it took a little while to get it all transferred, but it's now paintedarrow.com.
You can still go to paintedarrowoutdoors.com, and it's just going to take you to paintedarrow.com.
Yeah.
.com.
So go check that out. We, quick little plug here. This entire hunt was documented and filmed by yours truly with one of our products. This entire hunt. So when you see this,
Actually, two, because I used the Go Mag.
the GoMag.
Yep.
Wonderful. Great plug, Al. That's my brother,
Sup,
Big Al
y'all?
Hicks. He
Big Al
used the GoMag, but I used the micro arm.
What a winner.
The Mag Pro Micro Arm, and it is a fantastic tool for cell filmers or just somebody who wants to have a very limited amount of gear, limited amount of weight, and space taken up. So, promo code podcast on the website. So now, so we're actually driving back. This is another highway pod. We're going through Nebraska.
Yeah.
This is not my first time
Going through Nebraska.
going through Nebraska doing a podcast. It's a great state to do a podcast because it's just really flat roads for a really long
That's
time.
about all you can do here.
Yep. 292 miles. Stay on Highway 80 going east. So, everybody there? Jeff? Al?
Yep, we're ready.
This is
This is a banger. This is a hunting tune.
but like you said, there's a lot to this story and every detail matters. So it's gonna be a long slog, and just stick with us.
Stick with it because
Stick with us.
there's some detail in this that is
We've told the story enough to a couple people since we've been out of the woods that I think we have a good feeling on the criticality of each detail. So like it just all matters. That's what I want to say.
you guys you have no idea what's about to come for your ears. This is
we got to quit
great
hyping it up
story.
though. Let's just get into it.
So, first time elk hunters.
Correct. I've never shot an elk, and Hefe back there has never killed an elk. We both pull tags.
And I've never seen an elk.
And Al's never seen an elk.
Well, I did. I saw the tame
Yeah.
ones, but it's fine.
So that's very important.
Yep. First rifle elk,
First rifle elk,
Colorado.
the 12th through the 16th of October.
Drop camp.
Drop camp with a back, like an outfitter. Never done that. And the thing that I want to start with and really just kind of dive into was the horse ride.
Wow.
That was like the first thing that was kind of on everybody's mind. Like we got a long, like aggressive, extreme, elite, high level like horseback ride into camp. And that's very notable because none of us here ride horses ever.
Ever, yeah. And I think right away on the horse, getting into the woods there, like I already had underestimated the country.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like it was steep steep country.
Big time.
Big, like way, like, so we were hunting the northwest Colorado in the flat tops. And I don't know why, but in my head, it wasn't going to be as aggressive terrain as it was. And it was some steep stuff.
Yeah, like it.
Really steep.
So, Jeff, what was your expectation about the horses? Like, we're about to get ourselves into a really long horse ride. Like, where was your mind at?
When I grew up, we had a Shetland pony named Charlie. And
Charlie horse.
Charlie, yeah, exactly. But I guess I didn't really know how hard it would be in my body. And everybody said, "Oh, you should do some stuff to prepare for that." And
like, how do you prepare? Like what do you
maybe
do?
go out,
stretch,
go out and ride a horse, because you can rent them to ride on trails and stuff. But we didn't do any of that, and we all paid for it.
Yeah, I mean, just again to set the stage, this ended up being a 4-hour horse ride in. 4 hours in a saddle for guys who don't ride horses.
Like, just that alone.
But not like just walking down a trail along a creek. Like up and down, real aggressive stuff.
Yeah.
I definitely underestimated that. You kind of think to yourself like, oh man, compared to hiking in, this is going to be, cake. Like you just got to get on the horse, and the horse does all the work, which is, I mean, it very much is true, but you have to be an active rider. Like you have to be using your legs and like leaning with the horse, like
you're helping the
to
horse
help the horse out. Like it's very active, much more than I expected.
Especially when they're going down a
downhill,
steep thing and you're leaning back and all that weight's like, I don't know. I just definitely, I wouldn't say I underestimated it. I didn't know what to expect.
Right.
Like I'd just never done it. So that was like a huge eye opener for me. But
I knew enough to know that I knew enough to know that we were going to be like sore.
Yeah.
But I didn't know. They basically said, hey, here's the reins.
Yeah.
Here's your horse.
Are your stirrups good?
Are your stirrups good? They said, pull right, pull left.
Can you stand up?
Pull them back if you want to stop. And that was basically it.
That was it. And there wasn't a guy riding directly next to you. Like all the horses got in a line and off we went.
What was your horse's name?
Poco. And he was pokey.
Tell me, I want everybody to go around, talk about their horse.
I had a 17-year-old horse that spent a lot of his time doing tricks and, from what I understand, cowboying. And then now he's just an old horse that they take up the trail all the time. And he's got one gear, and it ain't fast. He's in no hurry. He likes to stop and eat just in the middle of the hike. He just does what he wants. But he got me there, and he got me back, and I'm grateful for that. So
Poco or Pogo?
Poco.
Poco. P-O-K-O.
P-O-C-O.
Poco.
Yep.
Mine was Jim, and he was
Jim.
He didn't seem to mind if I called him, Jim, Jimbo, Jimmy Tonka. Like I called him all sorts. I called him Jimmy Neutron. I called him like all sorts of stuff because I guess I treated him like a dog a little bit. Like every time he would like get through something difficult, I was like, good job, Jim. What a good boy. And I'm sure he was like, dude, shut the heck up. But
Jim was a big horse.
Yeah, he was a big, beautiful chocolate colored horse. And
chocolate.
Yeah. And he was very strong. Like it was almost like light work to him. I don't know how old he was, but every time that I was like, wow, this looks really difficult what we're about to go through, like he'd just motor through it. Like he just always had another gear. So he was very impressive to me.
Jim.
That
was Jim.
I called him Jimothy a few times as well.
Nader,
he liked that one.
What was your horse's name?
Cinnamon.
You had a gal named Cinnamon take you up the mountain there.
Yeah. Didn't you used to date a girl named Cinnamon?
Yeah, Nate rode a girl named Cinnamon all the way to the top.
Yeah.
She was spicy.
She was a white and brown mixture. She had a white rump, but more of the brown was kind of towards up the front.
Yeah. She's a pretty horse too.
She's a pretty horse. She was pretty sassy.
She did, yeah. She
was named Cinnamon.
She did well on the trail, but
she just find her own trail sometimes.
She would if the main trail was going one way and there was it kind of startled me a couple times because there's a ton of this trail going in and out was you're looking straight down.
You're on a cliff edge, a knife edge, and it's like there's only one
some
spot
of them
to
are cliffs, but even a lot of the places that weren't cliff edges, like we're riding up the hill from a creek or something, and if you step down or fall, like it's still, it's a
good fall.
Yeah, like then this horse would always want to go and walk on the edge,
and
so I started keying into every hoof, like would go in the center of the trail, like each foot.
Yeah, so it felt like she was almost walking over herself.
Yeah, and it was crazy because it was startling me a lot because I'm like, dude, I would try and pull her back on the trail, and she would want to walk right on the edge where like sand kept like pushing down.
Yeah.
Oh, scary. But no, she was a pretty horse.
Cinnamon.
No complaints. Cinnamon.
So that leaves Hefe.
Yeah, so my horse was named Anna, which is interesting because my wife is named Anna.
You don't say.
And this horse Anna was a big old gal.
She wasn't quite a Clydesdale, but she was like sniffing Clydesdale.
Yeah,
She had wide hips.
She was big.
and she had a big
old
belly,
horse.
so that your legs were really wide, spread apart, and it kind of hurt the outside of your knees because when you had to kind of hold off the galloping, whatever you call it, not really galloping, but
Just
Trotting.
trot.
trotting. But she had a lot of energy, and if I would ask her to go, she would run.
Yeah, she was big.
But most times we follow Alex a lot of the time. We were right up on you,
Oh yeah.
and she was like trying to push your horse to get going.
Oh
And
yeah.
every once in a while we got separated, and then she would run back to get right behind you again.
Oh yeah.
She like had a lot of energy.
Yeah, Poco started doing this thing as he got more tired. Like, I felt like he was looking ahead, and he could tell if he was coming down like the last few steps of a downhill, but he could see up there was going to be an uphill. He would use the momentum. So, like, if we were coming down a downhill the last 3 or 4 steps, he'd start trotting, and then he'd run the straightaway, and just to carry the momentum up into the hill.
Yeah.
He was smart. I think he's just tired too.
I can't even like explain to the people listening how just durable and relentless
Respect. I respect the shit out of
Athletic.
those
those horses.
Super
I mean,
athletic.
they just. I mean,
They work.
every single day they get up, they get on the trail,
and they work
and they work every day, and it's absolutely incredible.
what they do.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of mules too that carry some of the packs, but basically when we got there, protocol was you put food in this very specific size cooler that they requested that we bring, and we have a couple duffel bags pack. Each guy was limited to 200 pounds, which is a ton. And one thing
We
that I
were
think
way under that.
yeah, I was gonna say one thing we learned was the guys looked at us when we unpacked and were like, "That's all you got," and we're kind of like, "Yeah, I mean, you used to putting everything in a backpack."
It felt like they were
For
kind
a
of like,
week.
this is a week, right? Like, that's kind of, I'm like, shoot, did we underpack?
And there's other camps getting ready too, so we're kind of like
Gauging
sizing
it.
up the other camps, like what do they pack in, and we were lean. We were definitely lean. We had
real
more
lean.
room to spare.
Yeah, they even gave so one of the horses they had slated to go in with us, they gave it to the other camp because those guys had way more gear and we didn't need it.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
So we basically get there first light.
Get to the trailhead, first light, load up the horses, off we go. Minimal
Yep.
direction, left, right, pull back if you need to stop. Good luck.
And we take off.
Yep.
And I mean, what do you guys think? I remember just like feeling like I wanted to be a cowboy, like right off the
Oh
top.
yeah. Like I felt like I was, on the set of Yellowstone, the
Yeah.
show. The first, hour of the ride, I'm just like in awe, taking photos, like what in the heck am I doing? Then somewhere in the middle, it was like, gosh, I wouldn't mind being off this horse.
Yep.
And then at the end, like going up our final drainage to camp, like I was back in it. Like it was the most beautiful, like just one of those core memories. Like I'm never gonna forget this.
Mhm.
You're so right. Like that. Like we knew because we had our points marked out on Onyx. So like as periodically I would check that and see how close we were or whatever. But like you just said, the last drainage. So like we're basically hunting a drainage,
A huge one.
a huge gnarly drainage. And if you don't know what that, if I'm saying that and you're listening, that's foreign to you. Like you think about like if you put your like peace sign up on your fingers, like there's 2 mountains on each tip of the finger.
Mm-hmm.
That's the high point, and in the middle there's a low point,
That's the drainage.
and that's the drainage. So there's a creek down the middle, and we're taking this horse trail up the drainage I would say 2/3 of the way of the length, maybe even more, maybe 3/4 of the way.
yeah.
And basically that's where this tent is.
Yep.
And we're camped there, and it's just so vast and gorgeous that it just was breathtaking as we're riding in the sun. And I think that's a good place to kind of talk about the weather. Dev,
Yeah.
tell them what the outfitter told us.
Yeah, so we get in town and we meet up with our outfitter, and he's like, guys, like get ready for some tough hunting. He's like, my pops founded this outfit and he's been running it for his whole lifetime since his dad, he took it over from his dad. But basically, in the 75 years that they've had this outfit going, he's like, we've never seen a first rifle season this hot ever. And he's like, it is just get ready. It's going to be tough hunting. It's going to be the first couple hours of the day and the last couple hours of the night. If you're seeing them, you guys are going to a good area historically, but it's just going to be tough hunting everywhere is kind of how I took it.
And explain why hot weather's bad, and explain the full moon, explain everything about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, first rifle, like these elk, like I was talking to some of the cowboys, and last year when they were packing in through over a foot of snow. And it, during the day you'd be getting up into the 30s, maybe you'd see 40, and then in the evenings it's down in 10, 12 degrees, something like that. What we had was 80 some degree, 70 to 80 degrees during the days, and in the evenings or at night it would get down mid 30s. But then as soon as day broke, it'd just get real hot again. So these elk obviously don't love the heat. They've got a big coat on them. And then, to boot, like Nate mentioned, we had a big full moon. So big clear skies, big full moon. At night, like we're laying in the tent with all the lights off and the moon's so bright, it's like we have a light on in the tent. So these elk are taking advantage of the fact that it's the coldest at night and they've got a full moon and they can see well. There's just no incentive for them to move during the day.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So it just we knew, in theory, we should have known better, or I should have known better, thinking about it and talking about it back now. But like, it was just, everything was against us in that regard. Like there was just.
And explain the timber, explain the burn, give them a little bit more.
So a lot of our drainage, I don't know how many years ago, experienced a huge burn. So a lot of the spruce trees and almost all of the aspens are all burnt. There's no foliage on them. It's just tall trees that are charred black. And so historically that, those faces would be probably pretty good bedding for elk. But now, like if you're sitting on the opposite face, you can glass right into that stuff. And they still, from the sign we were seeing, obviously are moving all through there. But there's very few pockets of timber that didn't get burnt. And so on one hand, you could say, well, maybe that's going to help you identify where these elk are bedding.
Which is true.
But there were, like I just said, there were very minimal pockets of aspens that hadn't been burnt, and even fewer pockets of these basically pine trees or spruce trees that had not been burnt. And so there's
elk are specifically bedding in those areas in 75-degree days because it's much, much, much cooler.
Oh yeah, like our tent was in one of the small patches of pine trees, and when you'd walk out of the main drainage into, hike up into our camp, it felt like it was 5 to 10 degrees cooler in the middle of the day, just being in there.
Agreed.
Because you're down in the bottom of the drainage, as well as you just have all that cover. So we kind of knew or speculated that that's where the elk would be bedding. But as we kind of got into the week, like Nate mentioned, so it's a drop camp. So they get us there. There's a tent set up. There's, an axe there for splitting wood. There's a couple jugs to hold some water, a couple cots. And they say, see ya. Let us know if you kill.
Calling them water jugs isn't really accurate.
Yeah,
but they were jugs.
That's fair.
That's one thing that we didn't really prepare for because, again, if I would definitely go listen to the previous episode for more of like the,
I think it was a little bit of miscommunication though too. Like we were under the impression there was drinking water, like filtered, ready drinking water there for us, and what that meant was there's a creek nearby.
which is what I'm used to.
Fine,
but they
like,
didn't communicate it well enough.
Yeah, so we didn't bring the best filtration options. We didn't bring our own jugs.
We definitely have all agreed this. We would have packed completely different.
Yeah.
Because we've never done this type of hunt before. Like going again, we would do some drastic changes in the gear.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. So I want to go more detailed into the jugs thing. So it was some old like plumbing supply jugs that I'm sure had been cleaned out, but also then had been left there for so long that they weren't clean anymore from the elements.
They just had algae and stuff in them.
Yeah. And so, it saves you having to go up and down the hill every time to fill up your own canteen. But by the end of it, I was kind of like what Devin was saying at the beginning, like I'd rather just go down there and dip my canteen in the water.
Yeah, because it was just crap.
I wasn't worried about it. Like the iodine tablets aren't. I don't. We still haven't researched like anything about iodine, but it worked good.
It worked fine. We none of us got sick from the water, and it worked out great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So,
anything else to add about the weather, guys? I mean, before we're kind of getting into the details here. Devin did a good job. It was super warm.
Yep.
Full moon. They kind of let us know like it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, absolutely.
It dropped us off and off they went.
And Dad ripped off a shirt a couple times to get a tan.
During elk season in the mountains. It's just
I can't stress that enough. Like you went elk hunting with a bow a handful of years ago, and a snowstorm came in, and you were covered up.
Middle of September, we're in like a foot and a half of snow.
Like that's typically what you see.
Yeah, and now it's first rifle elk, and we had 70s and clear skies, full moon all week.
Yeah,
shirts off and
no
sunburns
like
on the
satellite
face.
storm that popped up. Nothing, just blazing hot, no clouds in the sky all day long. So that was interesting. But back to the timber. So they drop us off, and at this point, like Nate was mentioning, we have some points of interest from the guys, basically saying, from the outfit, saying these are some good spots you should check out. Historical elk movement. These are where people have killed. Yada yada yada. So,
and this is all public land. Okay, so
yeah,
these guys have camps all over.
Yeah, and there was other people that weren't with them in there.
And they kind of let us know like where the other camps were, and you might see people in these areas, and like if you can, try and respect their territory and turf, and just like stick to some of these areas that are closer and not as intrusive to other camps. So
yeah,
like we again never done this, have a very minimal experience with outfits in general.
Oh, yeah.
Zero in with horses,
none of it.
No prior experience with horses. And we're in there. So they leave, they drop us off, here we are.
Yep.
So day one.
Well, what I wanted to say was in general, like our main game plan was first couple days, we were going to try to work some of these points that he had shown us that weren't going into the dark timber. Because our thought, basically he was saying, if you go tramping through all the dark timber day one, all you're doing is helping somebody else kill an elk.
Yeah.
So he's like, it's going to be hot. It's going to be tough hunting, but here's the spots that I would probably try in the earlier part of the week. If the later part of the week gets here and you're having a tough time even seeing elk, then just push into the timber and it's time to get aggressive. So that was kind of our general game plan. So day one,
Jeff and myself, Hefe.
Yep.
We had radio names.
We probably should qualify that. Yeah.
So I think we did discuss that briefly, but my nickname was Dutch.
Yep, you were Dutch on the radio.
Hefe
was Jeff.
Slim.
I was Slim. Dev was Slim.
And Al, what was yours?
Bear.
So those were the nicknames. So Hefe and I, day one, were together, and we rotated every day.
I think Al became Buffy Mac, though, before the...
yeah.
Buffy Mac.
Before it was all said and done.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
That's
a shout out to the
Mountain House.
Mountain House Buffalo Mac and Cheese. Now dubbed Buffy Mac.
Yeah, let's just say there was some revenge of the Buffy Mac.
Yeah.
So
he's so good.
So
though.
day one, Hefe and Nate, we went...
Hefe and Dutch.
Yeah, Hefe and Dutch, sorry. We went up mountain, up the ridge.
Yep.
And I do want to say...
Up the drainage.
Yeah.
In the dark.
100%.
Yeah. That's a key. It's a key point to both of our hikes. So like day one, we're there.
Day one, we knew nothing.
We picked a couple points on the map, and we wake up early, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, ready to go kill some elk. And it's like,
it's dark.
Me and Al take off, you and Jeff take off, and we don't know where we're going.
But really quick. I kind of want to like. We kind of said this, like we're trying to get Devin out. We're trying to get Hefe out. Al and Nate, we're there.
Well, I was like
to help pack and to support,
spotters.
But I really spotters.
I was the A-team scout, and then like Nate was allowed to come as well.
No, but I took my role seriously because I really I truly from the bottom of my heart wanted to see both of you guys kill like that.
Yeah,
like that. I wanted that so badly.
Mm-hmm.
I can't explain it to you. So like, I wanted to be with both of you.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Oh
like,
yeah. I
best
get it.
friend, my dad.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to be with both of you to see you both kill like so badly.
Yep.
I don't know if I explained that early on, but I wanted to be there and help you guys on that expedition so deeply.
Yep.
So it was hard for me like going going back and forth. It was really it was so good for me personally. I'm coming from me personally. It was so good to go back and forth each day to be able to spend time. And it broke up the week for me really nice.
Yeah.
So anyway, day one. Jeff and I, Dad and I, Hefe and I, we go up the drainage in the dark. And you want to tell the story, Dad? I think we should let you tell it.
Well, we had to follow the river, the drainage, and but at some point it got too hard, so we crossed over to the other side of the drainage.
We crossed the creek.
The creek, which is not easy. I mean, it's not real wide, but it's bigger than one step. So you'd have to try to find something to step onto.
And it's dark.
And we did it, but I think one time I kind of slipped and fell in the water and got a little wet, but we were pretty good mostly. My big fear is twisting my ankle.
Get it out there now.
So let me say that. So my dad, ever since, what was that?
You should tell that
Pee-wee
story.
baseball?
Yeah, it was like Little League baseball.
We're throwing the ball. I'm going to do it because it'll do too long if Jeff starts telling it. The ball gets thrown over the fence. And back when he was a young stud, he jumped the fence like,
just hops it.
Swings his feet over, like puts his hand in, and he steps on the ball and rolls his ankle. And it just popped it. Huge ankle. And ever since that time, he's been absolutely like deathly afraid of rolling his ankle.
So for like 20 years since that incident.
Throughout high school basketball, I twisted the same left ankle like 5-6 times. So I have a bum left
phobia.
ankle.
He has an absolute phobia.
Yeah.
So here we are in the dark, trying to go to this point that we've never been to in the dark, and I'm like the only thing that I can think of is it's right off the creek, so let's just follow the creek.
Well, and the night before, so we get into camp, we didn't go scout around and identify, like blow a bunch of this out. We just hung tight in camp and figured we'd wake up in the morning and go after it. So it's not like we went and identified where the horse trails were or any game trails that we might be able to travel. Like we just put a blindfold on, woke up in the morning and walked into the dark.
Yeah,
basically.
Hey guys, let's try to not use headlamps as much as possible.
That was a thing.
Yeah. That was a thing.
Right.
Because like you're trying to treat this hunting ground like it's sacred because you get one opportunity 1 week. But we're going up. Okay, we're following this drainage, and the river's the only thing that I'm looking at on X like to help us get there.
Yeah,
and I don't know how to explain it. It's going to be hard to explain a lot of things in terms of the terrain, but like at the bottom of the drainage, the creek's at the very bottom, and each hill looking right and left is like extremely steep, like 30 to 45 degree angle to the very bottom.
You're in the bottom of a V.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. So, Jeff here, who's scared of rolling his ankle, we're side hilling in rock and muck and creek and hillside, like all the way in for like 600 yards in the mountain.
Yeah.
And it was so treacherous to get there. It just was. It just was a long time. We left at 5, I think 5:15.
Mm-hmm.
First lights at 7. We used every ounce of that 2 hours to get to this location, and we didn't even really know where we were going. We didn't know anything about it.
Like, this looks good.
And so we finally get to this point, and it's first light. And Dad, you absolutely hammered out that hike.
I remember there was part of where there's a bunch of dead timber.
Oh God! Yeah.
Too, and we had basically a portage over all this big timber, and then when you get over it, you don't know where you're going to land. I was scared of you. You're kind of landing into this.
It's like hopping over a fence
weeds,
and landing on a baseball.
And, yeah,
there's so much deadfall
and it
everywhere,
and that was freaking me out.
Yeah.
So we ended up getting there, and we sit at this beautiful spot, and we sat all day, dawn till dusk. The whole day.
Yeah.
Saw no elk, but
saw nothing, like no deer, no elk,
no deer. But at last light, Dad, probably 30 minutes before dark in the evening, we had a really cool encounter with some black bear. We had a really big mama sow, probably a 300-pound sow, and 3 cubs.
Only thing worse in nature is a mama bear with 3 cubs.
Yeah.
She's going to protect them.
And they came in right next to us to the point where I stood up because they came in hot. I mean, it was like, there they are. And
how close were they?
They were 75 yards. And we'd relocated. So the first thing in the morning, we went right to this point of interest that they had dropped. And I didn't know if it's like, this is the general area or like this spot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we went right to the spot, and I just, we wanted to start at first light there. We soon relocated, and I'm lucky that we went up mountain because these bears went like right to the pin that the outfitter dropped for us.
Yeah.
So we end up going up mountain literally 75 yards.
Yeah.
And these bears go right into the timber where we had originally started. And I just remember looking at this mama bear, the sow. She was like flipping rocks,
Yeah.
and it was like nothing
Just float them out of the way.
through this like scree field,
yeah.
like these big, I don't know, size of like a beach ball, these rocks, and she's just like throwing them, and the cubs are following along, like, Curly, Mo, and Jack. They're just all just like following along. They all look happy. They're doing their thing. It's really cool to observe bear.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking too, like I kind of stood up and grabbed the gun from Dad in a way. I'm like,
hey, bear.
like, hey, if they come any closer, like we don't want to startle anybody, or if the cub somehow wanders our way and like all of a sudden we're there like, waving like, hey, bear, that would be a bad situation.
Real bad.
So that was really cool. But we didn't see any elk. We didn't see any mule deer. We didn't see any ungulates. Dawn to dusk.
We heard no gunshots either.
That's
we heard
true.
zero. Yeah, the river. That's something to mention. The river's really loud.
Oh yeah.
So,
well, that was a cute first day. Dev, why don't you tell them what we did?
So Al's with me on day one. I've got a different point of interest that the outfitter dropped for us. Again, no idea exactly on the best route to get there. I got a point on a map. So I'm looking at this thing, and basically I'm like, Al, here's the plan. We're going to hike straight up, like gain all the elevation straight up, and then we're going to side hill all the way around to this big park that's like elevated way up on this ridge. And
it said it was 600 yards of distance.
Yeah,
but that
as
is
the crow flies.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So we start our ascent, and immediately, like, it's just it's absolute mayhem. There's just deadfall everywhere. So the first 30 to 40 minutes of the hike, Al and I are hands and knees, and I've got the gun in a pack, but like
literally just bear crawling with
we're just bear
20,
crawling
30 pounds on our back
over deadfall for just trying to get uphill. And I mean, for the first 40 minutes, we're just crawling over logs. Finally, we get up to an area where like most of the deadfall has ceased.
We were pretty good and sweaty and like,
yeah. And
we're like, wow, that was hard, but at least now we're up here.
Exactly. Like maybe we reach the bench, and this will be a nice little bench that takes us all the way around. Cause it was a little bit of a flat spot. There was some like aspen regrowth. So there's like some immature aspen trees, and I found a bunch of big elk beds. And obviously there were no elk in them. And we didn't really think we heard that we bumped anything out. But anyway, so we're like, okay, well this looks good. Let's start to work our way around. And we're continuing to kind of work up at the same time as we're working around. But long story short, we end up in the middle of this huge shale field, giant shale field, pitch black. I had already shut off my headlamp, and Al's like behind me, and I had to like keep checking to make sure he was still there. And
make sure he was still there.
Well, I mean, we find ourselves in the middle of the shale field, and I'm like, but by the time we're in the middle of it, I'm like, how did we get here? And I'm looking like up and down mountain, like, is there a better way to do this? And the answer was no. It's just all shale for hundreds of yards.
Well, and it's pitch black. Like, we can't see anything other than the 10 yards each direction that your headlamp lights up.
This is like some competition, like rock climbing environment. And I'm like, we're hunting. We're not rock climbing. What are we doing?
And so I'm like, by the time that it got this tough, we were already over halfway to the point. So I'm like, it's day one. I'm like, we just got to get there. Like, I'm sorry, Al, but like, buckle down. We just got to go. So we're crawling through this shale field, and we get to the shale field into some more deadfall and more thick stuff, work our way through that, end up in the middle of another big shale field.
And that was when it was demoralizing.
That's when, when we hit the second shale field and we're sliding down these rocks.
Yeah. It was like scary.
We're like, what are we doing right now?
It's both like, that's when it dawned on me, like, this isn't even like a just push through it thing anymore. This is like, oh my God, we're in danger. Like, and we both had a moment or two where we slid down.
And you just stop at the next rock that hits you. Anyway, we persevered. We get to the shale field. It's like we used a little more than our 2 hours that you were talking about. Like it's already cracked daylight, but like we're close enough that we got like about 130 yards to go, and I'm just
sitting here listening like. I can't wait. Like, these people that are listening have no idea what this story is going to do.
I know.
Well, the thing was, even after the second shale field, like, there wasn't like a clear path still. It was like we were just like breaking through small aspen growth and like these like really thorny bushes. Like, you just had to just break yourself through it for like another 100 yards. And then finally there was like some grass and like some side hilling.
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of speed it up a little bit. We finally get through the treacherous, like, scary stuff. We get to our spot. We're like on this hill on the higher side of this big park. And I'm like, it's day one, and I can just any minute I can see it happening. Like
Yeah.
it looked good. Everything felt good. I felt like we were in elky territory.
It felt elky.
I do remember thinking like during the hike, it sounded like we were a herd of rhinos. Like I'm like, there's no way. So that part of it, I'm like, if there was an elk bedded here, there's no way it's coming anywhere near us. But if something's already been traveling this direction, like maybe the timing will be right. So we sit for that morning, and I think we sat till about noon. Yeah. Something
also,
like,
when it got more light out, we turned around and looked like uphill, and we were like,
we
so
nearly
close
summited this thing.
to the top.
Yeah.
We nearly summited this thing, and I'm like, holy cow. And so we sit till noon, and then we're like there was just absolute dead, nothing. And then I'm like, as it got light, I was able to start looking around, and I'm like, dang, like there was some really good bedding in here, and we just blew it all out.
Oh yeah.
And so we make the decision that around noon, like, okay, we're not going to sit here in this specific spot all day. Let's hike back down to camp. We'll do some scouting on the way, kind of see if there's a better way to get to this spot for future in the week. So we get down to camp, start working our way down to camp. Basically, during that hike on the way down to camp, we saw that there was a much easier way we could have gotten there.
So much easier.
And we're looking up at like the shale field we crossed, and we're like,
We
oh
did
my
that
God.
in the
Like,
dark.
it was way up and super sketchy. And if you had daylight, you would have never said,
That's
let's
the way
go
we're-
up and cross that. Like,
Right.
It was one of those things that like, oh my God, that has to be where we came in. So anyway,
And also the way that we went down, there was so much more sign and bedding.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
like it was so elky right there. And you just hate to think about maybe there was something there
Yeah.
and because we shale fielded it across the top.
we came in above them, made a whole bunch of noise, and anything that was thinking about bedding there didn't. So that's when we decided, okay, we're not going to stick around here from dawn till dusk. We sat till about noon, worked our way back towards camp.
Made it back in like 30 minutes compared to the 2.5 hours the first time.
That's true. And so we
Live and
basically
learn.
got some food and got re-watered up and everything for the night hunt. And then I'm trying to remember, where did we go for that night hunt, Al?
Well, we didn't go. No, we went
You
to
went
that,
over to that.
Oh,
little
that close to the
bench area.
camp bench
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
the
yeah.
three-sided
So
little, yeah.
We decided because it was still day one and we'd already blown out that other area, we weren't going to make a big push to one of these other points we had. We were just going to try to stick it close to camp for tonight and push into a new area tomorrow. So we did that. Same thing.
We had a good
no
look.
elk.
We had a good look at the side hill down by the drainage as well, and then kind of across the drainage.
Yeah.
But it just didn't happen.
Yeah. No elk, real hot.
Day one,
Day
real
one.
hot, no elk.
No elk. That's the summary.
Oh,
Sore butts.
Day two.
Day two,
Now you're with me.
Dev and I.
Alan Hefe are together.
What did we do that
What
day?
did we do day two? Oh,
You went to-
we went way up to.
Yeah,
That
we
wallow
went
We
area.
went to the wallow, yeah.
we went up to the wallow, and
We found like an epic spot where we were able to observe a whole new drainage. So like the next, basically, when in Nate's analogy with the V, we went to the very tippy top of one of the V's of our drainage, so that we could then see all of
the next,
the other side of our drainage, plus look down into a whole other new drainage.
So
And-
great vantage point, lots of glassing opportunities. We did see a couple other hunters. We saw two groups of hunters.
Way off, about a mile or two.
Both groups were way off, but we did see two hunters on one point and two hunters on another point, and
Some mule deer.
we did see some mule deer. But we saw all
Zero
day.
elk.
We sat there all day. We had great conversation, great lunch,
Dawn to dusk.
absolutely beautiful country, but zero.
Zero elk.
Zero
Dawn
elk.
to dusk. Day two. Alan, Hefe, where'd you guys go on day two?
Dad and I were
We had a recuperation day.
yeah, we were pretty whooped from both of our morning hikes the
Day
day
one.
before.
Yeah.
And so we kind of liked that spot that Dev and I sat in. So we went back there for
That's
a
right.
good chunk of the day.
All day.
Was it all day? It was all day.
Yeah.
And we didn't go back for lunch either, did we?
We
We ate lunch right
the
there.
whole day we're there.
And it was great. The whole plan was, I mean, yes, we wanted to recuperate, but we also wanted to have a spot that we could see for a long way, and not necessarily be. It was more of a scouting hunt. Like maybe we'll see something we can make a play off of it. But we had a good view. But again, nothing that day either, except for a chipmunk that made friends with Dad, and literally was on his lap multiple times.
So quick recap: 5-day hunt. First 2 days, zero elk, 4 bears, handful of mule deer,
Dawn to
4
dusk.
hunters, dawn to dusk.
No
it's
elk.
it's very demoralizing. It's very
Yeah, I wanted to set the stage for day three.
because going into day 3, like
You're almost like
everybody's kind of down, and
Rough seeing at camp that night. We were kind of all like, oh, geez.
that's the halfway point. So like now you're 2 full days already gone. You're on headed into day 3, and like you haven't even seen an elk.
Yeah.
Like not even hundreds of yards off. Like
it is a little
nothing.
demoralizing. But I gotta continue to say, like, these hunts are the type of hunts where everything at the drop of a dime can change.
Yep.
And I was trying to like pound that into everybody's head, like I kept saying, you're gonna get an opportunity. And you just gotta be ready, because it's gonna come at the least opportune time when you're not expecting it. And you have to stay mentally in the game all week.
You carried the torch of positivity. Like you took on the role of keeping the vibes high for sure.
It is tough though. When you do 2 full dayers out in the country, and you're just kind of beat down,
And big hikes too.
Oh yeah,
Big freaking hikes.
It is always going to be tough.
Yeah,
it's always going to be tough to stay positive. But we go into day 3, and I remember waking up on day 3, getting out of that sleeping bag, and thinking, "We're going to see an elk today."
You said that.
We are going to see an elk today, and so that was the day that we switched off again. So
yep, you're with Jeff.
Jeff and I are together, and there was a spot like really close to camp that like it when you. I hate to say it, but like when you should never sit at a place or hunt a place that just feels good. But this place, like right at the creek there,
it felt great.
It just felt like it was close to timber, somewhat up the drainage where we'd seen these bears. It was close to like some other potential bedding. You guys were going to make a push into the exact same area that we had went the day before, because it was just like you could see so much country.
Yeah, like it was just a day that like you and I sat there that full day on day 2, but we were like, okay,
got to give it another chance.
This deserves a day. This deserves another full day.
It does.
You can see too much. There's way too much going for it. Like,
and I was excited to go there.
We got to give it another day. And I remember telling Al, like, Al, I know the hike I put you through on day 1 was hell. This one's still going to be a little tough to get there, but it's nothing like the day 1 hike.
Yeah. No, it was much better.
Yeah.
And
there's a trail actually leading there.
Which
actually that trail, Al and I identified day 1 when we were sitting at the spot.
Yeah.
For the evening. Remember, I told you, I'm like, I think there's a trail that goes right up through that spot. And that's kind of how we worked
that was a very key trail going forward.
Key trail. But yeah, and I was really stoked to go up there because I knew that there was a whole nother, I'd only seen the one side at that point, and I was pretty excited to get up there and see the other stuff.
So that was the plan for day 3, is that Hefe and I were going to sit right like real close to camp.
Start your day close to camp.
Start close to camp, let it kind of get gray light, and maybe do a little creeping around in the bottom of the drainage and just see what we could see. And you guys were going to go make a push for the same spot that you and I had said the previous day. So I remember we timed it up beautifully where we were there when you guys left.
Yeah, we maybe left 20 minutes ahead of you.
Yep.
Something like that.
It wasn't that far. It was probably 10 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys leave. We kind of got a quick coffee, and so we get down there, and we literally just sat right next to the creek.
Yeah.
Like right on the little footpath trail.
Yeah.
And we sit there, and I'm talking to my dad, and I'm just like, I don't know. I had a moment. It was a spiritual week for me, man. I was like praying. I'm like, man, like this, like give us an elk, God.
Yeah.
Give us an elk. That's where my prayer started. I'm like, man, just let us see an elk. Let's just see one.
Yeah.
I want to see an elk with my dad in the Colorado mountains with a gun in our hand, and just I just want to have that experience. Just start there. Let's just start with seeing an elk. And it kind of gets gray light, and I'm telling him, Dad, like, can you shoot right here? Like, what about there? Like, range and things. Like, that's 250. This is 100. Like, that's 75. Yeah. Like, could you shoot at this area? Like, this is a kind of common trail, and we were practicing stuff like that. You know what I mean? In that first dawn moment, and I remember kept saying to you, Dad, like, it could happen at any time. Anytime it can happen. These guys are going up that trail. They might kick something to us, and we're sitting there, and it's just so beautiful, and the sound of the water. You remember that?
Yeah, the sound of the water kind of
lulls you.
It lulls you to sleep. I know hunting whitetail, a lot of times you hear them coming. You can't hear anything there. It's just the water, and it's all visual.
Exactly.
It's something about the acoustics of the mountain, and I think that sometimes we think we're loud, but you're really not, because like as soon as you get 10, 20 yards away, something about that mountain, like it just covers up noise. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's deafening.
Well, and like the elk are so big too. The way they cover the country and walk through the country. It's not like you're sitting there and an elk's gonna walk 20 yards by and you're gonna like hear them coming.
Yeah.
Right.
Like they just travel through the country in a different way. Like
Yeah.
they're just so big.
Yep.
But anyway,
So
you
we're
guys are
sitting
at the
there,
creek.
and we're at the back to the V. If you make a peace sign, we're like sitting in the bottom of the V, right next to the creek. And this isn't so treacherous in this specific area. Like we're sitting at the bottom, we're looking straight up and down. So all of a sudden, I remember I first saw it and it felt like it was a coyote because it was so small, but it was like within literally the count of 10 from the second that I seen this thing at the very top. This thing was right in front of us. I'm like, Dad, get your gun, elk coming. I pull the binos up. I can see immediately it's a spike. And specifically on this hunt, for it to be a legal bull, which is very important, it has to have 4 points on one side or a 5-inch brow tine. So 4 points on one side or a 5-inch brow tine. So a spike doesn't cut it. But it's still a big old elk. It's a big old
Huge
male.
animal.
Yeah.
He had a big body, yeah.
And this thing comes right in front. And I'm like, Dad, get your gun. And I'm like, not legal. Do not shoot, but just practice. And I remember this thing came right in. It came right into 50 yards, man.
It stopped right in front of us like twice, broadside.
It was begging for it. Yeah.
And there's sweet video footage of that we got. And
So you think Al and I bumped it to you?
100%.
Yeah, because it kind of came from where
It
we
came
were headed.
through directly that area.
Yeah.
And just the trail that it took, it was like
Yeah.
pretty obvious, I think. But I remember asking you, I'm like, Dad, could you shot that? And you're like, oh, I could have smoked it.
Yeah.
You could have done a throwing knife at it.
You know, they always hear that elk are kind of like a mystery of the wild or whatever you call it, like a
Unicorn.
yeah. And it had this era, like it'll come up and it's just so smooth. And this looked right at us like it was, you can't hurt me, kind of like, like
Yeah.
Confidence, bravado.
yeah, confidence. Yeah, that's the word.
And these things, I mean, it just traveled the country so quick. So we had a really close encounter. And so this is where the story gets really good. Because this right here, this next little phase here is kind of like what sparks the rest of the week. So we get up, we sit there probably 45 minutes. The first 45 minutes of light, we sat right there. That bull came by, not legal, could have shot it. We're feeling good. We're like, yeah, we just saw an elk. We're on the board. Like we're there. That's the first step. You got to see him. So we get up. I'm like, Dad, let's just creep down this drainage a little way. Let's just see what we can see. And I was carrying the gun. We both had backpacks on. I was kind of in front. We were just creeping down the drainage, down the trail right next to the river, just creeping. And we're kind of just walking, taking our sweet time. And there's a trail that goes diagonal to kind of go up into this other point where Devin and Al were.
Yeah, it's the same spot that we had climbed before.
And we made a game plan. Like way off, we could see this big aspen tree, kind of like there's multiple aspen trees covering this pine tree. So like we're gonna tuck into this pine tree and kind of look down the drainage just to get a different view for the evening, and glass up into a different area just to get a different scene. And it helped because it was daylight because we didn't know a lot of this area yet. So we're on our way down to this point, and all of a sudden I just see a giant rack right in the middle of the drainage coming directly towards us, walking right at us. And I'm like, bull. I got 300 yards out. I could tell this thing was a bull.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, big bull, Dad, big bull. And I get the gun to Jeff. He gets it on his bag. We're in the middle of the bottom of the drainage on the trail. And he sets up, and I'm in binoculars, and I'm like, big 6x6, Dad. Like, if you can shoot, I need to know. I range it. It's 325 yards. And he looked like he had got bumped by another hunter or something. Like he wasn't just hanging out. He was definitely trying to find a new bed, going somewhere, moving quick. And I mean
almost. So I get him. I'm in the scope. I got him on a crosshairs, but it's all. He almost immediately turns and quarters away from us at that point.
correct.
And I could not stay. I mean, it's so far away. It's just bouncing all over.
Yeah.
So I didn't take a shot, and I wish I would have shot right there, just try, but I didn't really have a good shot.
I think that's mature though. I mean, he did. He never really stopped for us, and I was hammering on the cow call just trying to get him to hear us.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that river was just too loud. But I was just like, meow, just hammering it, just like trying to get him to like stop for 1 second. And for a second there, like I plugged my ears. I'm like, Dad, if you got the shot, take it. But he wasn't really giving us much of an opportunity. And that, like, I mean, I got a really good look at it in the binos. 300 yards, chocolate rack, 6x6, anywhere from 250 to 300 inch bull, like a slammer bull for public land. And I remember Dad and I were just sitting there like, man, that was like
A huge bull.
that was something right there. Like, that was a really, really nice bull. And guess where this thing's going? Right, directly towards Al and Dev. And we're sitting there just in the middle of the drainage. We're like counting, like on the watch, like they're going to shoot any second. Like, this thing is going right towards you guys.
Yeah.
And I'll hand it off to you.
So Al and I are up top at the spot where Nate and I had spent the day before, overlooking this whole other drainage next to ours. And it's getting close to 8 o'clock. Again, we're 2 days into the hunt, haven't seen an elk. And I think Al and I at this point are literally almost like verbally licking our wounds. Like, we're like, man, if we go on a third day of seeing no elk, like, this is really going to suck.
Yeah, and like we kept saying, like, it's not for lack of effort, but man, so far it's kind of brutal.
Yeah.
And we got up there after a pretty good hike, and David saw some mule deer. So it was like a pretty interesting first.
Yeah, we were
bit,
seeing critters for sure. We saw like 7 mule deer that morning.
which was nice to see something, because up to that point, I don't think we had seen anything.
Well, yeah, like we were just getting reps in, right? Like, just finding game on the landscape, and like, oh, that's a mule deer right there. Like, that, it was just kind of nice because you're spending a lot of time in the glass looking at nothing. But all of a sudden at like 8 o'clock, Al and I are sitting there, and with my naked eye, like, didn't even have binoculars up, I'm like, Al, there's an elk. And I whip up my binoculars, and I'm like, Al, it's a huge bull. Like, here we go. And so I grab my rifle, and I like hop out of this little makeshift blind we were in.
I was actually kind of surprised how fast Dev moved. Like, from the moment he saw it, he was like, elk, big elk, threw down his binocs. You even lost him at one point. And you were like, where'd I put him?
Yeah.
But like, he like throws him down, grabs his gun, like runs out commando style,
Yeah.
onto like the freaking plane and gets prone.
Yep.
And like, and
Set
that,
up my bipod. Like, I'm trying to find this thing and kill him.
like
right
all
now.
in like a split second. And I'm sitting there going, oh shit. So I'm trying to, my whole goal was to try to videotape whoever, whether it was Dad or Devin, like videotape on the Go Mag with my phone the shot and try to like actually capture the animal being shot. So I'm like, oh crap, I hadn't even gotten my Go Mag out yet. So I dug in my bag real quick and grabbed that, and I tried to get behind Devin. And that was my biggest regret of the whole trip, because I didn't actually see the thing with even my own eyes or through the binoculars, because by the time I got in position, Dev was like, okay, he disappeared. He's into the timber now.
Yeah,
But,
so he was doing exactly what you were saying. Like, he wasn't running, but he was going somewhere. Like, he was moving. He wasn't sticking around. He wasn't just milling around and feeding. Like,
he was in and out in like 5 seconds.
He
10
was
seconds.
bumped.
100%.
He was bumped, and he was, there was a couple times where he stopped broadside, and it kind of looked like he was looking, where am I going to go next? But basically, he worked up out of it. So where you explained that he had kind of come up the hill, our hypothesis is, instead of him coming all the way up over the hill and basically crossing over the top right by us, at some point he then kind of went out on this finger all the way around the end of this I don't know what you'd call it, like a cliff that we're on.
Yep.
And he works down into this drainage off the point that we were sitting on. And so the first time I spot him, he's coming up out of that drainage onto the opposite side face that we're glassing, and he's going right up into this lone little finger of green timber that hadn't been burnt, like confirming exactly what we said. Like, these elk are headed for these
This is where they're
small
bedding.
pockets where they're going to bed. And the funnier part, I don't even think I've talked to you about this yet, but the day before when you and I were sitting there, you literally said, Dev, that rock face, I really like that over there, because if you're an elk and you bed up there, you have to worry about nothing coming from this one side.
Yeah,
And you have all of this isolated pocket of timber right there to bed on.
exactly. Because they're just trying to survive. So you look at it from their perspective. If there's a drop off cliff,
Yeah.
there's nothing coming from that way.
So that's where he's headed. And like Al said, like, I wasted no time. I hopped up, grabbed my rifle. I'm trying to get a range. He's not stopping or, really taking any time. And at that point, I'm like, Al, we got to drop down. So I quickly dropped down off this little, I don't know, like down into this little ravine, down into this, where this wallow was. And I like side hill around and like very quickly closed 250 yards. First time I'd seen him, he was like 650.
Pause right there.
Yep.
Pause right there. So in that time, that's probably happening in live time. Dad and I, we decide that hold on. I'm mixing up the emotion because you guys had radioed us, right?
Yeah, that wasn't it. No,
That
we
wasn't
hadn't
yet, not
radioed
yet,
No,
not
Okay,
no.
sorry. Let me know when you get to the point where you radioed us.
I will.
Well, yeah, but basically, just real quick. So between Devin like dolphin diving into his prone position and watching this thing like fly through our area, he's in and out in like 15 seconds.
I think it was
And
a little longer than that, but it felt
quick.
fast. Yeah.
and Dev and I kind of like look at each other, grunt a little bit, and go, okay, we gotta
drop down.
avoid the wind. We're gonna side hill down here. He points and starts motoring, so we're both like on the move, like right away.
Left all our gear at the top. We
Didn't
got
even think about
we
it.
got our guns. We got the gun, and we just dropped down off this little edge down to where this wallow was, and side hill around. Wind in our favor. We're gonna pick up 250 yards. Best I could tell where he was originally with what I was ranging, he was at like 650.
And
So we cut.
put this bull to bed, basically.
Correct.
You
You watched him go up into this timber, and we're like, it's like 8:15 a.m. Like somebody bumped him out of his bed. He's trying to find the next closest spot where he's can bed for the day. At this point, we had no idea that you had seen him.
Right,
So we
exactly.
haven't radioed or anything.
Correct.
And I didn't bring the walkie with
We made
me.
a plan all week that we were
Yeah.
going to radio starting at 10 a.m. So it'd be 10, 12, and 2.
And that was it. Just to check in every
Just to
2
check
hours in the
in.
middle of the day.
Yep. See what the plan
Everybody's
was.
safe.
Yep.
Hunt the morning, hunt the evening. No radio.
Correct. So we hadn't talked to you yet because it's 8 a.m. So we dropped down. We closed 250 yards. So now we're sitting on the edge of this new face, directly across this, and it was the new drainage. So we're sitting directly across this new drainage from this little patch of timber that we think this elk just went to bed into.
Big, beautiful 6x6.
Huge 6x6. Only elk I've seen all week. We're now on day 3. You guys had seen that other spike, but we didn't know that yet. We had just cut 250 yards, so we're sitting there somewhere between 350 and 400 yards from where we think he just went to bed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Al, I hate to tell you this, but we're going to sit right here, baking in this sun with no cover all day. We're going to watch that bull come out of his bed tonight.
We're
And
gonna
of
kill him.
course, the first thing I think of when he says that isn't like, oh, I'm worried about the sun, as you could probably tell by my face right now if you could see me. I'm not worried about that. I'm just like, well, if we're gonna be here all day, Daddy's got to eat. Like, where's the food and the food and the water are back up the hill,
Yeah, we just left all of our gear
and
up
the
mountain.
walkie-talkie and check-in soon.
Yeah.
And
So it's 10 o'clock's coming hot, right?
Yeah, and it's like it's also different when we say like we dropped down 250 yards. Like dropping down 250 yards and having to go back up the mountain 250 yards to get like it's really steep stuff. I just want to keep
Yeah,
reiterating
extremely.
that.
It's going to be
Extremely steep.
nobody's really going to
It's-
understand
Yeah,
what we
like
we
it
were
sounds like
walking in.
200 yards. Like oh, no big deal.
the true
Like,
travel distance is not the sight distance.
It's just different. It's
Yeah.
just different. So
So Al goes
anyway,
back up, right?
So but we're sitting down there.
Well,
We're
at
sitting
any
down there.
moment we thought, okay, this thing might pop out again just for a second.
Like I'm glassing aggressively.
So
So
there
there
was-
staying in the glass, trying to catch a peek of him in the timber, anything.
Yeah, there was no negotiation on Devin moving an inch because, like, you need to
Yeah.
be here with this gun ready to go. And you kept testing out different, like, maybe I could prop my gun on this tree, or
Yeah,
maybe I could
That's true.
go prone right here. So we were like working out angles and knocking down grass, like we were ready.
Like once we got to that edge, where we ended up landing for the day changed a little because we were here, and I'm like, oh, maybe I could use this log to shoot on. And I didn't like that, so then we scooted a little. And I'm like, okay, I can kind of lay prone here, but this isn't perfect. And then we finally settled on a spot where like,
This is it.
if he comes out, I can kill him right here. We're ready. And at that point, Al's like, okay, well, I don't want to miss the 10 o'clock check-in. I'm gonna hike. I'm gonna hike back up. I'm gonna grab your pack and my pack. By the time I get up there, it'll probably be right about 10 o'clock. So I'll check in with those guys up top,
yeah.
and then I'll bring the packs down.
And all the while, Dad and I are like, I was really anxious to see if they'd seen this thing and tell you guys that we'd seen 2 elk.
Yeah.
Like, because our whole thing was like, today, all we got to do is just see an elk. That was the goal, day 3.
Yep.
so I got back up and
you radioed us.
I radioed you guys. I was there maybe about 10 minutes before check-in time, but I waited till it was radio time. Checked in with you guys, got all that intel. Like, okay, we saw that same one. And I was like, no way. And you guys had saw the spike and all that stuff. So we got some more intel. Checked back in. Told
Yeah.
you the plan.
Yep.
We're
You got
doing
back down and kind of told me all this.
Yeah,
too.
yeah. So I'm relaying it to Dev a few minutes later. But I'm
So-
like, hey, our plan is we're like, Nate asked me right away, what are you doing? What's the plan? Like, well, we moved in and we're gonna wait here and kill this thing.
Yeah, we put him to bed. We're here all day.
So I just want to take the floor for 1 second.
Yeah.
So after check-in, Dad and I we're sitting at this spot where we saw this 6x6 originally. We were dying to talk to you guys about it. We finally did. We kind of communicated. So we were like, okay, we're gonna go climb up to this area that I thought that you guys went to day 1, where the
Yeah.
shale field up this park. We were gonna try and scale the other ridge and go up
Yeah.
and just find some dark timber to sit next to for the evening hunt.
Yeah.
So that's what we do. I don't want to take too much time like explaining it, but again, it was another.
Brutal.
It was just a brutal hike,
This is the side hills, all burnt timber,
and we're
a
climbing
lot of
over.
fallen limbs. We're climbing over stuff, and it's really tall.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys got up to the bench thinking you were getting up to where
The
Al and
park.
I went,
Yeah.
and you were like, "Oh, we're at the bench below."
We're not even close.
Yeah, you got up to the bench that we had dropped down to. That was the easier way up to that
Right.
park.
So we're up there, and
What I'm hearing, by the way, is that one of your sons loves you and the other one wants to murder you on every hike. I just want you to remember that when you're filling out wills and stuff.
Okay.
Just pointing that out.
but it was a brutal hike. And I remember we get to this bench, and I'm like, Dad, I'm really sorry, but like we're not even anywhere close to
He
where I
doesn't
thought we
mean it,
were.
Dad. Don't listen.
But I said, let's just get some lunch. We'll hang out here. The boys are over there. I'm pointing to.
Across the canyon,
I'm
basically.
pointing across the canyon to the next ridge over, and I'm saying that right there, that little patch of timber, Dad, that's where this elk had bedded based on the communication you guys gave us. And I think we had another check-in somewhere in there where you and I had talked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're like, yep, this was, this bull's still over there. This is where he's at. I know exactly where he's at. And so I'm explaining to Dad, we're both using the binos, like that's where that 6x6 is.
And you're
Hopefully
like,
those boys kill.
over and out, kill him.
Yep, over and out.
Yep.
So, yeah.
That was the noon check-in, I think.
So we kind of skipped over when I walked back down. So I walked back down with both the bags, and I'm kind of a champ. Just wanted to point that out. And so we get down there, and I think it was like almost right when I walked up to Dev, and like I had both bags. We're getting resettled back into our little spot. Is when
Yeah. So somewhere in that commotion, I pull my phone back out of my pocket, which I had been using for OnX and whatever else, and I look at my phone, and it says SOS mode activated. And I like look at Al, and I'm like, Al, like what does this mean? Like I just like it says SOS mode activated. I just hit cancel. Like, you think that's a problem? And Al was like, well,
I was like, no. I mean, if
like,
you
no
clicked
message,
cancel,
yeah, if you
then-
clicked cancel and no message was sent, like should be fine. I don't know.
yeah,
Like we didn't even think about it, right? Like we just hit cancel.
I think we
and
had
I
the
shoved
conversation.
my phone back in my pocket.
We had the conversation of, well, you're on airplane mode, right?
Yeah,
And
Well,
he
my
was like,
phone
yeah,
was on airplane
yeah.
mode. Like whatever. Maybe
Hey,
an
we're fine.
hour.
We're good.
Maybe an hour and a half. Hour and a half goes by. And Al and I are sitting there just waiting out this bowl, having conversation about God knows what.
Getting rehydrated now that we have our packs.
And I hear, boop, 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 boom, 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 boom. And like, I'm like, holy
Is that getting louder?
I'm like, holy shit, Al, is that a helicopter?
We actually had a conversation too about like, we heard some planes and like, there's nowhere to land a plane around here.
Yeah, it's
It'd
not.
have to be a helicopter if there were an SOS, of course. That'd be so weird though.
Long story short,
Wham, helicopter comes
here's
in.
a helicopter. And he's like right over top of us. And I'm like, oh my God, Al, do you think that's for us?
No
And
way.
he does a big circle of our drainage and heads way back out. And I'm like,
Is he leaving?
okay, hopefully he's
Okay,
leaving.
pass the ball to me.
All right, here you go.
So Jeff and I are sitting there having a mountain house, and all of a
What are you
sudden,
having, Dad?
all
I
of a
had
sudden,
chicken, Kung Pao chicken. Delicious.
chicken, dude.
I had teriyaki chicken.
Hell yeah.
Nice.
We were having a hell of a time talking about like Dad had a nap. We were just
Saw two bulls.
getting back to
Yeah.
having mountain houses in the middle of the day in the mountains is great.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, thwack 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 thwack. I'm like, Dad, look at that, and I pull up the binos right overhead. I'm like, that looks like a helicopter, Dad. What do you think of that? Pass the ball back to you.
Yeah, so it does a big circle over us one time and it heads back out. And I'm sitting there praying to God, like, please.
You
don't
asked
turn.
me, is
Please
he
don't turn
leaving?
around.
Is he leaving?
Yeah,
And
is he
I'm
leaving now?
watching.
And then you look at me like, oh my God,
He's
Devin,
turning.
around. And I'm like, you're shitting me. So it seemed like this went on forever, but basically he does this pattern somewhere between 6 and 8 times. And each time that he comes back over our point, he's getting a little lower, just lower and lower and lower.
So pass the ball back to me now. So
Yeah.
me and Jeff were over on the other side of the hill, and I'm thinking, Dad, the other day, like maybe somebody's hurt because there's a couple hunters that Devin and I were glassing the other day, and
way over there.
man, he's going real low, right where that elk is. I bet you Devin's getting upset. Like that helicopter might spook that bull out of there.
Yeah.
Pass the ball back to you.
Yeah. So, so again, just circling, gets lower and lower. Like by the 8th time, he's over top of us, and it felt like he was so close, like I could see the sweat on his forehead. The guy driving the chopper. Like, I'm like, he's going to drop a freaking rope ladder to us, Al.
Pass the ball back to me.
Yeah.
So Jeff and I are like on our hands and feet. We're getting up out of this nap in coma that we're from the mountain houses, and Dad's like, maybe we should go over there because they're real low to the ground. Maybe they'll kick a bull out to us.
Always thinking.
And I got my iPhone out and I'm filming this whole thing. I'm narrating like, oh my God, this helicopter's right in where that bull is. It's getting really low. Pass the ball back to you.
Yeah.
And we went through all the stages of denial, by the way, of like, well, maybe there's another group of hunters that are injured. Oh, it could be.
Maybe it's them.
And
But
this
like
thing's coming in low
Yeah.
that last time.
By the 8th time, like I said, like, he's been circling for got to be 30 to 40 minutes. And Al and I are talking
they hovered
through.
in front of us and
We're
just
talking
stared
through,
into our
like,
eyes.
We're talking through, like, what's their protocol? Like, I'm sure they have to circle for X amount of time before they identify that there's not actually an emergency, or I don't know. We're talking through everything. But the last time I remember thinking, like, this guy's going to drop a freaking rope ladder to me. Like, he's right there.
We're looking eye to eye to them. They're hovering right in front of us.
And I kept telling Al, like, cross, like, because we're wearing all orange sitting on the edge of a hill. Like, I knew they saw us.
They saw us the first time, not the 8th time. They
And-
saw us
and
the whole time.
I'm like, I'm sitting there. I'm like, Al, we're going to cross our hands and we're going to stare up at them. Like, make sure they know we see them, but don't, like, wave both hands like, hey, over here, like, we're hurt. Like, I didn't want them to think, oh, these guys are, like, I wanted them to think, oh, it's just some hunters. Clearly, they're not the ones in distress or not in distress, whatever. So anyway, he starts flying over to the top of this timber where this bull just went to bed, and on the very top of where this bull bedded is this
On
big
this cliff edge.
On this cliff edge is this big open field, and
Like 100 yards
frickin-
behind the trees.
He puts that helicopter down right on that field, lands it right on top of the 6x6 bull on the side of the mountain, puts the helicopter bird down, kills
Cuts
the engine.
Pass the ball back to me.
Pass.
We're watching through our binoculars. Both Dad and I are like absolutely intrigued. We're like, holy shit, he just put the bird down. Like, he just put the helicopter on the ground right next to where the bull is. And I'm like, oh my God, like, there's no
What
way
is
that bull's
happening?
in there.
So
Somebody
Devin-
must be having a heart attack or something.
Yeah, we're convinced the other hunters had a heart attack.
Yeah.
And we actually prayed for him.
We did.
So Devin and I were still in denial a little bit. So they put it down, and they're like not really all that close to us, and there's a huge drainage in between us.
Dude, they're probably 1,000 yards as the crow flies line of sight. Never mind going to the bottom of the drainage and up to the other side. They're 1,000 linear, like, line of sight yards away.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if I really was hurt, what are you going to do?
Yeah, that was the conversation. If they're coming for us, why'd they park over there? And it's probably not for us. That's crazy. And no, it was
So
for
they
us.
cut the engine, and I'm like, Al, they're freaking coming. They're freaking coming right now, Al. And I pull up the binoculars, and Al's like looking, and I'm like, Al, I freaking see him. He's like, what? I'm like, there's two guys right there. One's got a duffel bag. They're both wearing jumpsuits. They're coming down the hill.
At the
right
same
now.
time, by the way, I'm looking back closer to where the helicopter landed, and we felt terrible because we blew up these other two guys' hunt because there was.
You didn't
there
blow
was-
up those. You blew up the whole canyon.
I know.
Everybody hunting in that whole
No,
mountainside.
I swear to God, there was two hunters within like 100 yards of where the helicopter landed. Like they guys got completely blown up by this.
Dude, the whole mountain.
Yeah.
The whole mountain.
He went around the whole canyon.
Everybody's hunt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this was like noon, maybe 1 o'clock, something like that. So I see this guy, and he's tearing down the mountainside, and they can see us, and we can see them, and I'm like trying to like glass at them, and finally they just start yelling, "Are you hurt?" And I'm like, "No!" And right as I said no, one of the guys that was carrying the duffel bag, like, he literally drops the duffel bag and just sits down.
Pissed.
Like,
He wanted the
he
action.
literally was just like, damn, like, they're not even hurt. And then this other fella just keeps hauling Tater to the bottom of the drainage. And I'm
Have
like,
you described this guy yet?
no,
Dev?
I will. But I'm like, Al, I think I got to go meet this guy. I don't know what I'm going to tell him, but I got to go meet this guy. And so I hop up, I leave the gun, I put my binoculars in my chest rig, and I start closing the distance to the bottom.
Straight down. Very steep.
Hauling butt.
Very
And
treacherous.
I get down to the bottom, and I meet this fella, and I'm telling you, he kind of looked like Tom Cruise. Like, he's wearing like a flight jumpsuit. He's got his aviators on. And he's like, "Hi, I'm Bo. Are you guys hurt? Do either of you have an iPhone or an Apple Watch?" And I'm like, "Yes, I have an iPhone." He goes, "We have a distress signal for this location. Like, are you guys hurt?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Do you know anything about that?" And I said, "I'll be honest with you, Bo." I said, "About an hour ago, I pulled my phone out of my pocket and
After
it
a hike.
said that SOS mode had been activated. Had no idea what that meant or how to cancel it, but there was a cancel button. I hit cancel, and that's the story. He's like, well, did you try to contact anybody, or did anybody try to contact you to find out if there was a real emergency? I said, my phone's on airplane mode and we're out in the middle of the backcountry. Like, no, I haven't talked to anybody.
Did you try and contact the authorities?
The local authorities?
No, Bo.
No,
we
I
didn't.
No,
We're
we
hunting
didn't.
elk, and you just landed on my bull.
Yeah, you just landed on the only elk we've seen all week. You just put the bird right on top of him. Anyway, so he's like, okay. He's like, honestly, I'll tell you, this actually happens more than you'd think. This is the first one I've been on.
This is the first one I've been on.
He said,
That's
but
rich.
I need to get your phone number. I need a statement from. Was it my phone number? No, I need your address. I need your name.
The statement.
And I just need a verbal statement that you're not actually hurt, so that I can
And
close
meanwhile,
this out.
I'm 50 yards behind him. Meanwhile, I'm looking up this huge cliff we just flew down, and I'm like, he's not injured. He just came like 1,000 yards to meet you.
yeah.
Are you hurt? No, my legs are working fine.
Just fine, Bo. And so he was super nice. I was pretty embarrassed and upset because obviously it's not something I meant to do. It happened in my pocket. I still don't even know how it happened. I went into the SOS settings and turned off all the shortcuts on I hadn't ever messed with that, but whatever the defaults were, like apparently if you hold this one button for 5 or more continuous seconds, it just automatically calls SOS. Didn't know that. That's a default Apple setting. So I went and fixed all that because I'm like, how the heck do I trust my phone and stop this from happening in the future? Because I rely on my phone for OnX and all those other things. But anyway, he was super nice and he was like, look, don't worry about it. And I was like, dude, I'm so sorry you had to come all the way out here and this whole thing. And he's like, this is the best day of my job. I got to fly, I got to go for a hike. Like, don't even worry about it. And
Steamboat Springs.
yeah, he came out of Steamboat, I think he said. And
Oh, and that was the other funny part was he's
he
like,
said, yeah.
I could tell after the first couple passes you guys weren't injured. So I called off the other team that was
Yeah.
going to come for like the ground crew, like the real boys.
He's like, ordinarily, if we wouldn't, like if I hadn't been able to identify that somebody was hurt or somebody wasn't hurt, the next step was they would be sending in a search party. But I already called and radioed to them and said, like, this is like a non-emergency
Yeah,
situation.
we grounded the bird from Steamboat. Don't worry.
So that whole thing happens. I talk to him, I make the hike back up, and I'm in a bad way. I'm pissed. I'm absolutely humiliated and embarrassed that it happened.
And it might cost something too. You think it might charge you?
I hope not. That was the first thing that Bo said. He goes, this
No
isn't going to
charge.
cost you anything. No charge. This is funded by the state. Glad everybody's okay. So he kept saying, sorry to all the hunters. I'm sure we pissed a bunch of hunters off. And
Oh, and by the way, didn't he say there was no elk that he saw?
yeah, he goes, oh, and by the way, I'll save you some time. There's no elk in this canyon. We just flew all over it 8 times. There's no elk in here. And I said, thanks, Bo.
Like
And
it
I'm
was
sitting there thinking, like, dude, you just landed on the only elk we've seen all week.
like
And,
actually like within 50 yards of where this elk last.
Oh,
was
yeah.
seen.
100%.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
Like
You
I'm
can't
sitting there
make it up.
watching. I'm literally narrating to Dad. I'm like, Dad, that chopper just put down right where that elk is. Like, Devin, I was expecting to hear like you just complain so much that evening about, oh my God, these guys had a heart attack and threw the bull out of the canyon, and it was like this deal.
Well, honestly, I probably would have been able to live with that more if it was a real emergency and somebody had been hurt. But the fact that it was like a bonehead thing that my phone just did in my pocket, that's why I was upset.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, I could tell Dev was very pissed, right? And so we make it up back to where we were, which was a pretty big undertaking. Like coming down much easier than going back up this face. It was pretty steep.
There wasn't a lot of talking. Al was trying to like make small talk and keep me in good spirits, and I was just
We get to the top, we're catching
Hiking.
our breath, and I'm like trying to like find the silver lining, which there is none. But I'm like, well, at least he saved us an evening hunt of that
Yeah.
wasn't even there. Assuming the intel was correct that there was nothing there. And he just did not want to hear it. So
I'm
we're
like,
like,
Al, we're out of here. Pack up your shit. We're getting out of here. We're not sitting here. Like if that elk was in there, he would have just blown out of there when the freaking chopper landed on top of him.
One of the 8 rounds.
He didn't
through.
come out. Like we're going.
hey,
we're just out of here.
at least we don't have to sit there all evening and find out he's not there now.
Yeah.
And Dev's like, shut up, we're going.
Al was offering everything he could, and I appreciated it.
So we made it back to you guys, and you told us that you could see us hundreds of yards off in the binocs. You could just tell like it was bad. we were in not a
Well,
good
you
place.
figured I was just mopey because the only elk we'd seen all week was a good bull.
Yeah, so you
and
boys roll up, and
helicopter blows them out of there.
Dad and I had kind of relocated a little bit because we realized we were nowhere near where we wanted to go. So we kind of went back to where we saw that spike bull, which is right by the trailhead, right by the camp. You guys come walking by, and I'm talking to Dad. I'm like, man, that bull must have ran out of there. I don't think Devin would have left, that kind of thing. And you pull up, and you're like, dude, I called that SOS, and I'm like, please pause. Let me get my camera out. I get
You did what?
and I start filming because
Never let
I'm
a
filming
good
this whole
crisis
thing,
go to waste.
and it took me a second to actually process what
you
you'd
were
said
saying,
because
yeah.
you were you came in
I was
PO'd,
yeah.
and you explained to us you called that helicopter and it was a
My phone
false,
butt dialed it.
and I was like, you're kidding me.
I do want to say before we exit the helicopter topic, I want to give absolute praise to the local authority. I was so impressed, and in a way, feel so much safer being out there with how serious
From
they
your
take that.
iPhone.
Your
iPhone.
My iPhone butt dials SOS, and they fuel up the chopper and get there right now.
Like
I
in
was
an
Parties,
hour.
dogs, the whole thing.
I was very, very impressed, and I think people should realize that that's a safety blanket when you're out there.
This is no joke. This backcountry and these guys being there as fast as they were.
They take it very seriously.
I'm sure it made our wives feel a lot better too, knowing that. I mean, that's probably the silver lining in that story is the wives are more
Yeah.
likely to let us go now.
Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to note that. I was very impressed with how serious they took it. I was very impressed with Bo. I was very impressed with everything except for the fact that it happened.
yeah.
Well-
I just want to say our radio names kind of changed after that. Dev's
Heli
new radio
Dev.
name is Heli Dev.
Heli Dev.
So,
Heli D.
But
Heli
okay,
D.
so only I, could make fun of you really in that situation because I know you so well.
Yeah.
But dude, it was one of the funniest things in that moment for me because just knowing you,
just loved it. But
just
picked
knowing you,
but you picked the wrong time to laugh for 20
Nate
minutes.
just kept ripping off. Every time it would die down, Nate would just rip off that band-aid
Yeah.
one more time.
dude, just knowing you though, because I knew you were embarrassed, but you were this
I'm
is.
not afraid to admit it. Wouldn't you be embarrassed?
You were so down, you were like, I want to go home right now. You're like, I'm done. I'm sick of this.
We reached a
this
low
is-
point.
I'm like, what are we even doing here? I'd rather be at home with my wife and kids.
We haven't seen any
we haven't
elk.
seen any elk. The one elk we saw, I just freaking called a helicopter to scare it out of here. Why are we even here?
It was the
Funny. It was one of the funny. I'm sitting there cracking jokes in the tent. Dude, the there's always a story. I was explaining earlier. My dad's got stories he's been telling me and my brother for years that just don't get old. They're just hilarious. You can't script them. There's something about it that you just absolutely unbelievable, hilarious. And I'm like, dude, my boy's always gonna ask, tell the story about Uncle Dev calling the chopper into the mountain cliff.
tell us about Heli D
Tell us about
again.
that one.
Dude, yeah.
The funniest shit ever.
It was the taxpayer-funded elk scouting service, and we
Yeah.
just had to test it out. It worked.
But all joking aside, going back to what you're saying, the authorities
They take their job
responding,
very seriously.
that's the guy you want coming to save you.
100%.
You
he
said
was
that
he was
a bunch of times.
He was a fit. I don't know. I have to guess he was probably 40-some years old, but just a real fit dude that was very seriously thought somebody was injured in the mountains, and he was ready to put him on his shoulders, hike him back to the helicopter, and save the day. And I'm like, if you're dreaming of a bad situation, that's the guy you want coming to save your life.
100%.
Dude.
And we said that too. What's his plan? Sitting, landing it over
He-
there.
That was
Is
his
his plan to
I'm
run
coming
down
over there
this
to
gulch?
get you. I'm bringing you over here.
And the answer was he 100% would have done it or died trying.
100%.
And it's the conversation since then, that evening, just to kind of get through night 3, we didn't see anything that evening.
Yeah.
I
So now we're 3 days into the hunt.
Dev and I are kind of we went on this really long walkabout. We found some new country, kind of similar to the area that you guys had bumped that bull, just in case he came
felt-
back.
It felt like your effort that weekend was let's go take a long walk and get your mind off this shit. That's what it felt like you were trying to do, and that's exactly what we did. We
That's
went and
exactly what we
burned a
did.
bunch of miles, walked way more miles than we had business walking. We kind of knew we weren't going to see any elk, but we were
Can I
just
be honest with you? You probably know this, but I wanted to. My whole thing, I love overcoming obstacles and odds.
Yeah.
Overwhelming odds, I want to overcome.
Yep.
Because why not? It has to happen to somebody.
Yep.
And so I'm thinking, what if we saw that bull and actually killed him? Because Dev is like in an all-time low that I've ever seen him in our careers and friendship together. Like, how many? Like, you actually wanted to go. You're like, I want to go home. Like, I like this is
I
absolutely
was
ridiculous.
not to the point where I said, please, can I go home? But I was like, I would rather be at home right now.
Yeah.
That's what I said.
And we're on this like amazing backcountry hunt. So I knew you were
100%.
low. I knew
Yeah.
you were low, and I'm like what if we shot that bull and went over there? Like what if, like, against all odds and any business shooting that elk, what if we go on a walk over there? Like, that's what I'm thinking
Evening of day 3.
that night.
Yeah.
And
So we go on a really, really long walk.
we didn't see him though.
No
I
elk.
just cut to the chase. We didn't see him,
No elk.
but we had a really good long walk, like you said. We got our minds off of
Honestly,
things.
it cleared my head a little. I sort of had I think I remember saying something to you, like I had a mindset shift where I was like,
Still the funniest shit
instead
ever.
of-
Because you're on the way back, you're like, the helicopter landed on the side of the damn cliff, Nate. Like, that's not normal.
no, it's really not.
It was great.
Well, when we got to camp that night, like, we're on the fire, we get back into the cot eventually, and of course there was a couple more times Nate had to keep ripping that Band-Aid open, of course, but we all kind of like took our turn of trying to like pump each other back up and
Yeah.
give Dev some hope.
And I said something like I'm going to, like I switched my mindset from, man, it's going to be so fun to go on this backcountry hunt and shoot an elk with my best friend. Like, I switched my mindset to be, it's going to be so fun to go on this backcountry hunt and get my balls kicked in for a week, and maybe I'll shoot an elk, but I get
Maybe.
to do it with my best friend.
Yeah.
Like, I had to like switch it to enjoy the suffering. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Embrace the suck.
And I was trying to go into day 4 with a little bit more of like a, look, we haven't seen any elk, so what's going to be worse? We just might not see any more elk.
And right there, folks, we're going to end this episode, and you're going to have to come back for next week's episode to
I'd like to pitch in one more thing to end this, which
hear about day 4 and day 5, which I promise you
Is worth it.
is worth
This
it.
is still the end of day 3, real quick before we cut it. And so one of the things that I said to Dev, not to like brag about myself winning the golf championship this year, which did happen. You're welcome. I said I had a big moment in this golf tournament, and for me, like, my true love is golf. I love hunting, but this golf is my thing. And I was on the biggest stage of my entire life as far as my golf career, and it was in a chip off, and I hit the worst chip of my life. I dribbled it 10 yards forward, like duffed it real bad
in front of a crowd.
in front of a whole crowd like of 70 to 100 people. So I was telling Dev, that to me was kind of like this helicopter thing today. And
You
then-
can tell us how that golf chip ended
Yeah.
on the next
and
episode.
I said it's going to make you feel a heck of a lot better if you end up making the putt to win it next. But if you don't, I mean, yeah, you're going to feel terrible about this helicopter thing. I'm not going to lie to you. But
Yeah.
the end of that story was that I ended up making that putt, and I said, dude, you can still make this freaking putt. You can still come back and win this thing.
Yeah. So we tried to keep the vibes high, and we got all gussied up, ate some good food. Well, halfway decent food the night of the day 3, and into day 4 we go.
Guys, tune in for the next one. It gets really juicy. See you soon.